man is found dead and decomposing in his van.
And the body had been there for several days.
No one knows what happened to him, but for his family, suspicions abound.
I thought that there had to be some sort of foul play. My brother just wouldn't sit down and die.
Then, a routine field investigation takes a deadly turn and threatens the life of Dr. G's medical investigator.
There is a risk to being in the healthcare profession. There's a risk of doing this job.
And later, a mother of two heads off to work, but never arrives. The next day, her traumatized corpse is discovered at the bottom of a drainage ditch on the wrong side of town.
She'd been out there probably more than 12 hours.
Didn't look good. It looked like it was going to be homicide.
Altered lives, baffling medical mysteries, shocking revelations. These are the everyday cases of Dr. G, medical examiner. It's 8 a.m. at the District 9 morgue in Orlando, Florida. When Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Jan Garavaglia arrives, morgue technician Gene Konis is already preparing Dr. G's first case of the day. Over the past 20 years, Dr. G has performed thousands of autopsies in 5 different cities. But only a handful of the most dramatic cases remain vivid in her memory. One such example is that of Edward Stanton. This particular case stands out as a reminder of just how dangerous working with the dead can be.
There is a risk to being in the healthcare profession. There's a risk of doing this job.
We're all very much aware that we're about that far away from winding up on one of these tables.
It's a hot August morning, and a jogger stops to take a well-earned break. Suddenly, she notices something odd. A man slumped over in his car. Concerned, the jogger calls 911. Deputy Angela Lopez is first to arrive on the scene.
We went to look into the car. He was laying in the back, and you could see he had like a flannel blanket over him.
Upon closer inspection, she makes a grisly discovery.
I picked up the blanket, and I noticed there was a lot of blood all around his chest. Then I noticed the blood all over the car. So that's when I knew something wasn't right.
Police are worried it's a homicide.
Police quickly learn that the deceased man is Edward Stanton, a locally known transient who's been living out of his car.
I thought, maybe he was murdered. Maybe somebody came and messed with him while he was sleeping.
Believing this is a homicide, Deputy Lopez requests assistance from Dr. G's medical examiner's office. Soon, medical investigator Frank Tovar arrives at the scene to examine the body. But as he pulls the body from the car, his routine investigation suddenly takes a harrowing turn.
We wear protective gloves. One of the gloves ripped.
Frank, as he brought the body in, reported to me that his glove tore when he was inspecting the body, and unfortunately got blood on his finger, and there happened to be a cut on his finger.
If Edward Stanton is carrying an infectious disease, Frank Tovar could be in grave danger of contracting it.
Hepatitis C, HIV, these are major illnesses that will concern you, and unfortunately that goes with the job.
Now it's up to Dr. G to determine what killed Stanton and whether her medical investigator's life could be at risk. Dr. G hopes the internal exam will solve this mystery and determine if Stanton is carrying an infectious disease, which could put Frank Tovar in serious danger. Dr. G opens the body of transient Edward Stanton with the standard Y incision.
How's our tax situation?
As a first step, her staff removes blood and urine samples from the body.
I tested the man for hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and HIV. We're just going to have to wait for that toxin micro.
Now Dr. G looks for visible clues to how Stanton might have died. So far, everything checks out. But when she examines his liver, the mystery behind this death begins to unravel.
I do see right off this just gnarly, shrunken, fibrotic yellow liver. So he's got end-stage cirrhosis of the liver. We typically see that with chronic alcoholics.
Edward Stanton's liver is surely diseased enough to kill him. But what Dr. G finds next rocks this theory.
When I get to his esophagus, they were probably the worst case of esophageal varices I'd ever seen.
Esophageal varices develop when blood is unable to flow into a hardened, diseased liver. Instead, it is diverted into tiny vessels inside the esophagus. As blood flow increases, the vessels stretch and eventually tear under pressure. When varices rupture, blood is expelled rapidly up the esophagus and out of the mouth. Dr. G now knows why there was no wound on Stanton's body. The blood was flowing from his mouth.
You're bleeding out very fast, you get a lot of red blood coming out fast, and you die of exsanguination, loss of blood.
Dr. G rules blood loss due to ruptured esophageal varices as the ultimate cause of death. But she cannot file this case away yet. Transients like Stanton often carry infectious diseases, and there is still the question of whether Frank was exposed when his glove tore open. Until toxicology results come back, this case remains pending. 6 agonizing weeks later, the reports arrive with shocking results.
He was negative on the B and the HIV, but he did have hepatitis C.
Those results could be dire for Frank Tovar.
Frank will not be a happy camper when he hears that we find out he has hepatitis C.
Hepatitis C is a potentially fatal bloodborne virus that destroys the liver. 4 million Americans are infected with the hepatitis C virus, and between 8,000 and 10,000 die from it every year.
Unfortunately, yes, you can get hepatitis C if you do have an open wound.
There's always a possibility that this can happen to you.
Frank Tovar is immediately tested for hepatitis C.
It's a quick test, and we'll get the hepatitis C and the HIV test results with, back then, it would probably a day.
Though it's only a day, it's the longest day of Frank Tovar's life. The case is wrapped up, but the fate of Frank Tovar, Dr. G's medical investigator, still hangs in the balance. 24 agonizing hours later, Frank's blood test finally comes back.
And everything came out okay.
Frank luckily didn't get hepatitis C.
He is one of the lucky ones. Each year, 1 million healthcare workers in the U.S. alone suffer accidental needle sticks and injuries at work. Thousands of them have contracted HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infections from these exposures. But for Frank and Dr. G, the risks at work fail to deter them from the profession that they love.
We can be exposed to that type of a situation anywhere, at any scene. But that's just what we do.
Honestly, I feel more comfortable working in a morgue than walking down the street and having somebody cough on me. At least the people in the morgue aren't actively spreading it to me. I can control it. You just have to be careful, and we just have to use universal precautions and try not to cut ourselves. Okay.
Poison, poison, poison ivy, girl.
The people you hang out with when you do drugs are not the nicest people in the world. They don't care about you. They don't care about what happens to you after you die. I've had them where they put them in a field and set them on fire.
Just to find you to scratch.
Yeah, they'll just dump you like a piece of trash.